Spoken Mail. I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken Label. Hi, it's Andy N from Spoken Label. Thank you today for streaming or downloading another episode of Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up on beginning of 2016 and as of speaking has currently nearly 300 sessions. The full archive is available on Spoken Label bandcamp.com. Although it is available for free for stream and download if you wish, I am always grateful for any sort of kind of donation to enable me to keep the running costs of this podcast going. And enjoy. Take care. Bye bye. Spoken Label.
Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house on Monday night, and it's bloody horrible out there tonight as well. I got home from the doctors before, and it's not stopped raining all the way home, and I got drenched. But anyway, so Spoken Label is a good way of cheering me up after that. And we're local today as well, which is good, because I've not spoken to a local writer for ages. And we're over to an area, the lady in question speaking calls Burnage, but I call it Bernage. So, but I've got Louise with me today. So, Louise, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell obviously people who you are, where you're from, and what style you offer. And we'll start from there.
Okay. Hello then. So I'm Louise Finnigan, and I'm a writer of short stories mostly. I'm also writing a novel. I'm from Manchester. I like to write things about Manchester, set in Manchester. That's probably quite a strong part of my writing, is that sense of setting and place. Yeah, I mean, what else would you like me to say at this point, Andy?
Yeah, where did all your writing originally come from, then, Louise?
Yeah, I've had quite a long and fractured journey with it. I'm not that young, but I'm quite young as a writer. I feel like I've not really been writing seriously for that long. Probably like a lot of people, as a child, I loved to write, and I do have this really vivid memory of being in primary school. I think it might have been junior 1, which is the age that my oldest daughter is now, so kind of 7, that kind of age. And I remember that I was young enough to still be writing in pencil, and I was writing a ghost story, and the teacher kind of said, you know, you need to be rounding this up now. We're moving on to the next activity. And I just had this really strong sense of no, I don't want to round this up. I was so involved in it. And I did have this moment where I thought, I love doing this. This is what I want to be doing. And that has always stayed with me. And I do think ever since then, I have known in my heart really that that's what I want to be, and that's what I am. But of course, you get older and life intrudes and you need to make money. And certainly in my early 20s, I would have been way too scared to say that writing was something that I wanted to do, because I needed to provide, just some kind of security for myself. And I was obsessed with that, really. So it was much later, kind of mid-30s for me, really, on maternity leave, actually, just having just that tiny bit of space away from my day job, which is teaching. Obviously it wasn't a lot of space because I was looking after a baby, and then another baby came along quite quickly afterwards. But I started writing somehow. I don't really understand how, but I started writing again at that point. I think I just did it because, in my heart I've always wanted to do it. But I just suddenly had space to begin again. And as soon as I did start again, all this stuff that must have been kind of welling up that I needed to write about, and all these experiences came out in this very powerful way. That's where I am with it at the minute. That was kind of maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And since then, I've written a novel, I've completed it. I've written maybe 12 short stories, but some of them have been published. And I suppose I'm at a point now where I know that I need to write every day if I can. I can't always, but I'd like to. I understand now that it's something that I need to do.
Yeah, no, I think it's come to natural. Life, I think, sometimes comes that way naturally, because I'm very similar to you now, because I'm glad in the sense of I started writing when I was 10. I can also see the parallel as well, because throughout my 20s, I was working an absolute rubbish job and I barely wrote. And then when I went to uni, I was 28 as a mature student. Did 3 years of intense writing and then drifted for a few years. And I started myself again properly in mid-30s. So, yeah.
So was your degree actually in writing?
It was. I did it at Bolton University. So, and that's what really got me going on it, because I learned a lot from that. I did. I think it's obviously with you teaching as well. What you've done for yourself there is you've got the analytical side of it. You can look at your work with obviously know where you're going wrong, and that's, I think, the important thing with writing, really. I think because we've started obviously 3 or 4 years ago. It's just, I think you probably agree with me. Probably just the right time for you, probably, wasn't it?
In some ways, yeah. I think I had something to write about. Maybe I've always had that, but I think I just had so much that I needed to write about by that stage of life. But also, yeah, I think the fact that I'm an English teacher, perhaps, even though it's so different, analysing works of literature that are quite old, quite kind of, not modern, very little of what I teach is contemporary. That's so different to what I write and just to the process of creating something and making something. But at the same time, I've always been in it. I've always had to read for a living, and I've always had to think about the writer's craft, I suppose. I think it's a very, very strange move to make as a teacher, as an English teacher, because, in your head, these writers are these hallowed figures, and they tend to be, writers from the literary canon, and that's what you think of when you think of a writer. You're thinking of these usually old white dead guys.
It's true.
Yeah, and these incredibly celebrated figures who just seem a million miles away from our own lives. So then to even begin to think that you could call yourself a writer becomes a bigger and bigger step, and it seems like an almost ridiculous thing to claim about yourself, but it isn't. It just means that you write, that you want to create something, you want to put something out there in the world.
Yeah, I think you're dead right with that. That's what it's always been for me. That I think it took me a little bit older than what you are now, but it took me to a couple that I said to pushing 40 to know where the direction I was going. And in the past 9 years, it's gone off in all kinds of weird directions. And I think as writers or creative people, that's the way it goes sometimes. I think sometimes it just takes longer than others, because you came on to, obviously, people who don't know us, we first met at my Speakeasy the night I called Run.
Yeah.
And you're brilliant you were on that night as well. But we get people there, I can name 2 people I know that are 20 and 21 that go there. And I thought, at that stage of my life, and you were the same, I'd have run off that stage screaming. I've been trying to read or write that stage.
Yeah, I would have walked past a bar advertising something like that at that age, and something in my heart would have kind of just crushed in on itself a little bit, because I would have just walked past it and I would have thought, well, I can't even go in there because I'm too scared of the thing that I want to do. Do you know what I mean? I was too scared to even be around other people doing that kind of thing, because that would mean that I would have to do it.
Yeah.
I was way too scared. Yeah.
I think it's natural.
Kudos to those people, obviously, these brave young people. So many more of them as well. Like young people that I teach who are getting involved in spoken word and very, very confident to put themselves out there. And it's really, really good to see.
Yeah. There's been a number of people at the moment who've been contacting me, and not a lot of people know this, and Amanda knows this, and you do now as well, that contacted me for advice by setting nights up since post-lockdown. And it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant to hear people actually wanting to do that. Yeah. And that's why, but I don't, we're digressing completely. So we have to talk about you here today. Now, obviously, the first major publication that you've had was your recent short story, or longer short story, Fly on the Wall Press, which came out a couple months ago. So would you like to tell us about that? And tell us about, obviously, the title of people are interested is Muscle and Mouth. So tell us about the origins of Muscle and Mouth.
Right, that's that's a tricky one to go back to. So Muscle and Mouth is a story set in Manchester. It's like in a non-specified council estate in Manchester, And the format of the story is that you've got this young girl. My narrators tend to be younger characters. So this girl's 17, Jade. And for her A-level language assignment, she has to investigate the language of her friends. So she's looking at spoken language. So she's been asked as one of her assignments, and this is one of the ways that she's going to get into university, it's a coursework assignment, to go and record her friends speaking, transcribe, and then analyse their speech. Now, obviously, the world that she's kind of entering into in college and going into university is this much more middle class, much more educated world, kind of alien to who she is and where she's from, whereas her friends and the way that they speak, that is who she is and that's where she's from. So she's forced into this position where she has to analyse and pull apart the language of people for a certain audience, and she, I suppose, has to be quite academic and quite cold in her treatment of something that is actually like very, very personal to her. So the format of the story is split into 3 ways. It comes across through 3 different mediums. So there's the story where we're hearing about Jade going to see her friends, and when she's in this flat recording this transcript, this sudden, unexpected event occurs. At the same time, you get the story as a transcript. So she transcribes the conversation between her friends, and the reader sees that as a script that comes in the story. And at the same time, you get the essay. So you get Jade in this cold academic language reflecting on the language of her friends and pulling apart and analysing and linking to research. So it's quite strange the way that it's told in these 3 separate ways. But hopefully what I've managed to do is say something about language and say something about how, I suppose about how your language is forced to change if you want to change the kind of social spheres that you're inhabiting. And at the same time, what I hope I've done through the event that occurs in the story is tell something that is exciting and that makes people feel tense. Like a lot of people who've read it, I think my favourite comment that I've had back on the story is that it's made them feel very, very tense and very uncomfortable. So I wanted that kind of, I wanted to do something that was unusual and experimental in form, but I still wanted it to have that kind of slightly nerve shredding effect. Because, the reader really should not know what is about to happen from moment to moment in that story.
I think that's good writing. Because what I've heard about this is like I've read some of the reviews on it. And I'm always a believer in if you get emotions onto the reader that you want, it's a success of a story.
Yeah,
that's why. So I thought that you really had a perfect, really good success to that. And like I know you've done quite well with it, obviously, because you've been speaking to lovely Bella Kenyon over at Fly on the Wall Press, and I know Bella fairly well, and you've done. That's great when you get involved with Bella. She's such a good, nice lady. So that's why. So brilliant with that. Now, obviously, also as well, changing topics. I know you've told me before as well, obviously, about the Bristol Prize, weren't you? Where you had a nomination for the Bristol Prize recently as well. Can you tell us about that next?
Talent being exhibited there, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that from what you showed before. It looks brilliant. Well done with that again. So now, obviously, the last part of the session, I always like to ask the writer what they've got coming up next, plan work-wise. You've touched on this already, and I know obviously you're working on your debut novel at the moment. Now, can you tell us anything about this debut novel? Obviously, it won't give too many spoilers away.
Oh, right, yeah. So I think, that's quite hard for me to talk about in some ways. I don't really know how much it's that, whether or not I'm able to talk about it. As just that I'm not very good at articulating it sometimes, probably because I'm so deep in the middle of it at the minute. I'm like right in the thick of the final edit. It's a missing person drama, but it's not really a drama. It's not really a thriller. It's much more centered on the character herself who loses someone. And it's about not getting answers, really. It's about not having any answers, not having any explanations. And when you've got nothing, what the brain naturally does I believe, is projects its own answers, its own fears, its own hopes, its own explanations into that void. And in that sense, that nothing, that absence can become really potent. So that's really what the novel's about. It's about having no answers to major questions, like important questions, like where somebody is, and taking everything, all your previous experiences and hopes and assumptions and prejudices and all of that kind of squirming together to fill the void. That's really what the novel's about in an abstract form. Yeah, and I couldn't really say any more than that, I don't think, about what happens with the characters, but that's at the root of it. That was the idea that I had from the beginning and that I've tried to stay true to.
Brilliant. Good luck with it, definitely. So now, obviously, I want to ask you about that then. Obviously, the process of writing a novel then for you. How is it compared for you to writing short stories then?
I started writing the novel really before I got into short stories, but I think that was very foolish of me, and I absolutely wouldn't recommend that to anybody else. I think
I can relate to that.
People, sensible people write flash fiction first, and then short stories, and then novellas, or novellas in flash. That's a form that I really love as well. And then they write novels. But I was stupid and arrogant and tried to write a novel without having really sat down and mastered the short story form at all. Well, I mean, you never mastered the short story form, but without even trying, to sit down and do it properly. So I think that, the novel for me has been like this really intense labour of love for a good 5 years now. And I'd say that what is the same about writing a short story and a novel for me anyway is that you have to have an idea that absolutely obsesses you, something that you are so compelled to write that you're not going to mind editing it 100 times. I think a lot of people kind of feel like the short stories, you don't need to be so obsessed with the idea to write the short story, but I think you do. I think, short stories you have to edit 100 times as well. It's just that the editing process is quicker because the piece is shorter. But for me, with both the short story or the novel, you have to be absolutely obsessed with the idea. You have to really want to get into the skin and under the skin of whatever idea it is that you're writing about. But with the novel, I suppose process-wise, it's this thing about learning and growing as a writer. Like, I think I've changed a lot over the last couple of years because I didn't know at all what I was doing at first. So with a novel, perhaps taking on feedback is even more important, making sure that those key ideas are translating without you having to tell your reader what the key ideas are. So being part of a writing group was really useful for me. I've been part of Mairtin Writers Circle for a long time, and I could not have written that novel without them. And then also at the same time, whilst acknowledging that you're going to change a lot, because most people who write novels, it will take years to write it. Sorry for people who do NaNoWriMo. Like, I know that some people manage to do it in a month, but most people I know, really, it is a process of years. So it's letting yourself change and grow as a writer during that time, but at the same time, trying to stay true to the original idea that you had, like at the same time remembering what it is that you're trying to write. I think that's been the trick I've been trying to master when it comes to writing the novel.
Brilliant. Good luck with Louise, definitely with that, because it's a process. I've got 2 or 3 aborted novels knocking around them. One day I'll finish one, but I'll get them.
How do you find it?
Difficult, because I'm dyspraxic, so it takes me twice as long. That's why.
Yeah.
I can do some things really easy with my brain to click a switch on. Like poetry, I can usually get right, and I can play the piano really well. But novels, it's much more intense, and I struggle with it to some degree. But it's I think it's the hardest discipline to do as a writer, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they're very unwieldy, aren't they? They kind of grow and grow and grow, and then they kind of get out of your control. And yeah,
it's a master thing, because when you're doing you're doing focus on a character in a novel, you can't have them like one page growing a third arm, then suddenly going back to 2 arms, and it's just, I think it's learning the levels of consistency with it. So that's why it makes it really hard. And good
I
luck
know
with
that it's that kind of practical detail like that. I'm actually finding that really difficult at the minute. I think also because I'm trying to write a novel while teaching and like looking after children as well. I find that it is those kind of practical details that's hard to keep in your head because you're constantly trying to track where your character is emotionally. Obviously, like you know that that's the important thing, and then you forget little details like at the start of the scene they were drinking coffee, and at the end of the scene they're drinking tea somehow because you've just built in that little inconsistency because you've not been thinking about it. You've been thinking about so many other things. So I just think it's very, very hard to keep tabs on all of that detail, especially when you've got other things going on in life as well. It's very hard. It's unwieldy, definitely.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just, I think as a writer, always an artist, I'm always a believer you've got to keep pushing yourself, and that's fair play to you. You'll get there with it. I know you will. So whether you want to write another novel after that is another ball game. But I think you'll work that out when you get there, won't you? Probably so. So anyway, Louise, to conclude then seriously on the first part, if people want to find out more about you, where are they best going?
I don't know. If they wanted to, you could go to Twitter, I suppose. So I'm Lou Finn Writes on Twitter. Quite easy to find. And there are also pieces that you can find online, like my story Sirens is available through the Manchester Fiction Prize website. And of course, you can buy Muslim Mouth through Fly on the Wall Press as well.
Yeah, which can be found in people are interested. People can find that on all good and evil booksellers, as I would say. Cause I've just been looking at Waterstones before, and obviously, of course, Fly on the Wall Press's website as well. So definitely with that. So
yeah, and they're great. Like there's so many good things that you can buy through Fly on the Wall anyway. So the whole short season that Muslim Mouth was part of was absolutely brilliant. Like I still keep on getting deliveries of different short stories that are part of the same season, and I can't believe how good like every single story has been. Like some really experimental and interesting and kind of daring and dangerous pieces. So I think Isabel Kenyon, who runs Fly on the Wall, has just done such a fantastic job with that. So yeah, if people haven't looked at Fly on the Wall Press's website yet, then they definitely should.
Well, I could recommend that because I've got David Hartley's
isn't it brilliant?
I've known you wouldn't have known this actually, and I was Speakeasy the night we met you out of in September. Dave actually originally set up Speakeasy. He did, would you believe?
Did he?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and what happened was after he had to stand aside for various reasons, Steve took it over, and then Steve asked me to come on board a month or two later, and then Amanda came on straight after that, so it became a three-piece. So that's why with Dave we set Speakeasy up, and I've got at least 2 or 3 other books that Dave's knocking around, and this is his darkest book I've ever seen of his so far.
Is this Fauna you're talking about, or Pigskin?
Pigskin.
Yeah.
Pardon me. The full length one. I've got it's in my room, to be honest. I think is it Pigskin? Yeah. No, it's the full one that's got about 10 stories in. It's not the one story.
Yeah, right. So Pigskin is the one story that's out with Fly on the Wall Press, but Fauna is his recent publication. That is so dark, and it's so. I always think his prose is very, very crisp and sharp. You know, there isn't a word wasted at all. Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah, you get some people, and when you meet them as writers, the most easygoing people and unserious people, you know. And this applies to me and you as well, where like I'm very easygoing and to a point, but my writing is one of the few things I take serious. And it's the way you do working your novel and your stories is the same for you as well. And I think it's a trigger switch sometimes, I think so.
I think it's funny as well how you can meet people who are just so pleasant and so sweet, and I don't know, like they just, you know, wouldn't ever want to say anything offensive in conversation, but then you read their stories and it's like really, really dark, explosive stuff. I always find that really interesting as well. That happens quite a lot with writers, I've found.
Yeah, it does, and it's like I think obviously back to what you're teaching as well. Like it's like you'll be marking people all the time for stuff, and you must feel sometimes you look at some of the work getting sent to look at, you must be thinking, really?
Oh well, anything that my students send in incredible stuff. So yeah, I'm always very impressed.
Brilliant. What we'll do is
but there's always I'm never surprised I think I've stopped being surprised a long time ago by what people write. I think you can never match the personality of a person in front of you to the writing that they produce, if you know what I mean. Like you'd never guess who it was who's written stuff, because I think that's one of the most wonderful things about it, that people are so different creatively, perhaps, to the personality that they project when they're having a conversation with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that applies to you probably like yourself when you look at your own work, for example. Like it was I remember you read that short story out, or the extract out at Speakeasy. I was sat there thinking, I thought, there's no way that's based on Louise's real life or hers. She's not substituted herself into the person of that story there. But there was something of you. There was something of you in that book, in a very subtle way, and that's good writing, I think, John.
Yeah, well, we're all a myriad of different people, I suppose, aren't we? I think that's one of the things. Writing's one of those areas where you really see that. Yeah.
I think I use the word lie. We're good liars as writers as well, frequently as well.
Yes.
That's why. So
I was taught. I did do a tiny bit of. So I did one module in creative writing at university, which I absolutely loved. Although I was very intimidated by it though as well. But I do remember I had a writing tutor. It was John McAuliffe was his name, and he said to me that if anybody ever asked me if my stories were true or based on real life experience, to just say yes about everything, and then people would just think I had a really interesting life. So I've always thought maybe that is the best approach, to just be like, yes, yeah, all of it's true about everything.
No comment. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Right, Lou, we'll wrap up here then, and we'll take a quick break and let you
Great.
We'll let everyone hear a bit of your work in a moment. So it's been I've really enjoyed this, Lou, definitely. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a minute.
Spoken, mate.
Hi, guys. Time of the day now. I can relax now and be the audience. So over to Louise. Go for it, my friend, and I look forward to hearing your work.
Thanks. So this is an extract from my short story called Speck, which you can find in the Bristol Short Story Prize Anthology, Volume 14. It's from Tangent Books. I'm reading an extract that's a little bit further through the story. So what the audience might want to know is that the narrator is a young girl. It tells us that she's just moved into a new house, into a new area. And on the first night that she gets there, the nursery, like the local nursery, has been burned down, but people don't know who's done it. The other information that we've got in the story so far is that she's kind of starting to spend time with new friends who are her neighbours on one side. There's a little girl called Ashley who's the same age as her, but's probably had quite a different life to her so far, and her brothers Kyle and Nathan. What's also mentioned is that she's got a neighbour on the other side because she's in a terraced house. So she shares a wall on the other side with another neighbour who makes her feel uncomfortable. So I'm going to start reading from about halfway through the story. It's nearly my first communion, so I sit on the carpet at school and learn about having specks on my soul. They will be there long after I die, adding years to the waiting room that comes before heaven. The specks don't only come from things like swearing or forgetting to brush your teeth. They're trickier than that. Some of them are almost invisible. I put my hand up to ask how I can stop the specks from slipping in when I'm not looking. I imagine them everywhere, like pollen, like flakes of ash on the night of the burning nursery. The kids from next door go to a different school down the road, so they won't even know about the specks. I wait and wait until my arm hurts, but they just keep talking about the bread, so clean and perfect, like a white wafer moon, and how it will take all the specks away, all our doubts, all our questions. It sounds brilliant, so I put my hand down. Metal spikes scrape my belly as I try to wriggle under the fence. It drags my skirt up and my legs flap about stupidly, kicking at concrete and air. I shouldn't have come. I should have stayed in the garden with Jem. Shell, Nathan shouts as he stands over me and laughs. I don't know what he means, but it has something to do with embarrassment. Shame spreads through the parts of me that are close to him. Kyle is there too, over on the wrong side, with my legs. I cannot breathe under the spike. Ashley slips slick as an eel and yanks my skirt until it covers me. "Don't be snide, Nath," she says, and they snigger and slump away towards the burned things. I try to follow her by sucking in my flesh and pretending not to care about the skin on my cheek as it tears. She holds her hand out as I wobble to my feet. We walk together across the blackened grass. "Look, that's where the bikes used to be, under there, and they had a wall that you could do what's it on, thingy." "Painting?" "No." We've played out together a few times now, me and Ashley, and I'm starting to notice things like how she gets frustrated over her words sometimes. "More like chalk?" "Yeah, and them duck things for riding on, it was dead good." She nods at Kyle and Nathan, who are poking at a yellow shape that has half melted into the ground. The spring that plugs it to the charred floor still has some bounce. They creak it back and forward and stare hard into its faded beak. "Who did it?" I ask, because she seems like someone who might know. But Ashley just looks at the floor and says, Some knobheads did it." Yeah, I try to push those kind of words from my mouth, but I can't. I start to worry about the specks. The air must be full of them here. "Do you think they saw?" Ashley jumps down from the railing, scratches about in the rubble and dust. "Saw what?" Where her Power Rangers t-shirt rides up, I see deep shadows between each knobble of spine. I wonder if she is hungry, and if next time I should bring something, hula hoops perhaps, or Chewits. Me, when I was under the fence and my skirt was up. Ashley licks a fingertip and rubs at something from the dirt, something small and glittering. I wonder if it is glass, a tiny splinter of glass from the shattered nursery windows. She is looking at me now, holding it out to me. "Don't let people make you feel stuff," she says. "Fuck 'em." I gasp. "Fuck them," she says, lifting her finger like a gift. This is what I hear in the dark. Cars on the carriageway, some slow like tearing paper, some slicing at tarmac, leaving open wounds in the air. Jem's cries, hot and sweaty from the bedsheets, the sigh and shuffle of Mum's feet, how she cries sometimes about Dad. Far away, Kyle's video game, Ashley's door slam. Nearer, on the other side of the wall, a creaking about and a coughing. When the other noises stop, it doesn't. I make my first communion in a plain white dress with a peach sash. "Don't worry," Mum says, "people won't get dressed up too fancy around here." But the church car park is crowded with hoops and veils and little white gloves twirling at Diamante drop earrings. I feel the guilt of her palm smoothing my hair as I kneel to pray my soul specks away. The altar has carpet like marzipan, and the priest speaks from folded robes of icing. He gives us the moon wafer, and then talks for a long time about how we are different now we've received it. We must love one another. We must love our neighbours as we would love ourselves. And I think, all of them? And feel the specks sliding in. I try to ignore how the moon wafer dissolved on my tongue so quick, as if it was never there. Thank you.
Wow.
That's where I'm going to stop for today.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, that is dark. That is dark but engaging. I think is a good word I've used for it there.
Thanks.
Wow, indeed.
Thanks.
That one. No, check it out, everybody, seriously, because when I first met Louise at Speakeasy, she'd have a spellbound, and that later bit's even more spellbinding. So, like I said, you can either pick up this short story on Fly on the Wall Press online, or easy on Waterstones and probably other places as well. So, thank you for today, Louise. Been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, come back on when the novel's out and published. I'd love to talk to you about
and
that.
I'd like to be at Speakeasy again soon as well. So I'm going to gear myself up for that.
We'll speak about that off mic in a minute. So hang around. Yes. I do need to put you off mic. But everybody, stay safe and stay over. See you all soon.
Spoken, mate.